What I'm trying to do with my student, I have this, first of all, I have this grace to teach kids and their parents at adult education. So kids at Winfried School and at adult education, their parents. So what I'm trying to do, first of all, is to explain a concept in many different ways. Not give just one way. I try this way, I try this way, I try this way. The second thing is to pick the examples from their culture. I have this example with one of our students. I like this example. We were talking about chemistry, and we were talking about how to differentiate base and acid by the test. And then we picked, we said, okay, a base is bitter. And he said, what is bitter? He said, beer is coming from a very conservative family where they're not drinking beer.
Right.
He said, coffee, they are drinking coffee with sugar. So, okay, let's think. What about cassava? Because in their culture, they are eating cassava, and their cassava is very bitter.
Bitter,
There's, oh, okay, I understand now.
Right.
So try to go in their culture and pick an example. The other thing is just to change the language. For those who are speaking French like me, I change. This is this, do you remember? Okay.
Which many of our kids run into the same thing, right? Often our kids spend much of their time listening to something.
Well, just on that note of identifying themselves, so my students use this as a resume for themselves, and they filled out most of the information in class. And it was really nice because they also got to see the transparency of whether or not they were literate in their first language, and we've got to learn what literate meant, and sort of so on and so
It's a
forth.
great idea.
Yeah, they used it for open house, so it was sort of their display of who are we.
Right.
And then they also place them, we have student portfolios that follow them around that they use for student-led conferences, and they use that in their student portfolios to introduce themselves. So this is a really powerful thing, I think.
Excellent. So we'd like you to just take a few minutes to think about this student. Picture in your head maybe somebody that you'd like to paint a profile for. And if it's not somebody, if you don't work directly with students, maybe think of somebody who's come to the Tally Work, for instance, that you've said, if I had only known more about that student, what could I have done differently? Thank you. Anyone else?
I have a question about how to figure out if there's an actual learning challenge, or if it's just, not just, but if it is just language-based ELL issues. I work in academic support, and we're constantly trying to tease it out.
Sure.
And are there assessment tools that we could look into, or is it more work?
Yeah, I have one that I think spans the whole spectrum. Because it's about, you used the word earlier about making sure that we don't do things just as a token. And like, what is tokenism, and where being able to train colleagues and really seeing it sort of goes with a cultural, awareness and calling out people when something is inappropriate, guiding people into more appropriate, just all of that, and it's a whole spectrum. Some things seem obvious to me, but I'm sure I do other faux pas, and I think that that's sort of constant, but it's something that I want to think more about and cultivate.
Yeah, Nicole.
Mine falls under the question category. So I have a caseload, I'm an ESL teacher, I have a caseload of, roughly about 40 ESL students in 2 different houses in 8th grade. And my difficulty, or my question is, how do I build such an intimate relationship like you displayed with that young man with all of my students? Because most of my students, or some, are mainstreamed, and so I barely even know their name, or other than just see them on paper and see what their proficiency level is, and their WIDA scores. but, you know, then I see others more directly in the classroom. So I struggle with being able to assist or serve all of the students sort of equally and get that intimate relationship going, with some more than others, so it just doesn't seem equal.
Yes.
I guess I'm looking for some support on, somebody mentioned something about training, and I'm an itinerant ELL teacher between two buildings, and I would really like to be able to help my colleagues to feel more ownership for the ELL students, and to share that a little bit more.
Yes. I guess that I'm sort of interested in, well, I'm not an ELL teacher. I'm a teaching artist with the Telling Room, and I'm not really trained to work with ELL students. But I worked with a group last summer and thought it was extremely rewarding, and I'm interested in it. But for someone who is not doing this all the time, I guess tips or strategies for coming in and doing an enrichment, creative, story-based project with fellow students in a way that, I guess, looking for strategies or things that work for others.
Yes.
I'm an art teacher here, actually, and I was trying to figure out, or I'm not sure if it's a question or want to be able to, is like my big thing with kids is trying to make connections and like giving them that safe place to tell their story. And like I have a hard time with children that sort of are entered in and become our first place they put them is in art, because we can model and visually see things and work together. But how to communicate when they are either not willing to speak yet or can't quite speak yet. So I do a lot of peer interactions with kids who can communicate with them. But I want to be able to do more for them. And so what are strategies or ways to make them feel safe and comfortable with me, to try to get them to teach me something and learn a piece of their language or something they want to share with me, so I have to model learning from them.
Right.
But other ideas on ways to just like make those connections and get that safe feeling.
Great. Good. And this, what's exciting is, and Robin and I both, as teachers, there's always that idea of like, I just want to walk out of that workshop and have something in my pocket that I can whip out